Hey guys, welcome back. Took a little break, take care of some medical and personal stuff. Digging back into the Chevelle. Today I thought I would cover something that used to be a big deal back in the day, but I'm not seeing it too much more, so I thought I'd put the information back out there. 10 bolts. When you get your 10 bolt, everybody wants disc brakes in the rear. Great. All the reasons why. We won't go into that here. Everybody that gets the kits gets those goofy little calipers. I got a caliper here. Goofy little caliper, and it's got a little spring on the back. This one don't have it, but it's got a little spring and it does the e-brake. Those are the Eldorado cataract type calipers. A lot of companies use them. It's in most of the kits you get that are disc brake now for the rear, and I don't like them. They don't adjust right. They're insanely expensive if you have to replace one. You can only get one in this state and one in that state, and it just takes forever. So whenever I do my upgrades, I like to make sure that it's easily obtainable parts. So what am I babbling on about? Disc brake swaps. I don't like that caliper. So I like the in-hat parking brake, which is traditionally, if you're doing the LS1 front calipers, which is what I did on this. Let me get you in there. What's LS1 stuff? It's the Camaros, 4th gens that traditionally have LS1s, although the V6 brakes bolt are the same. They bolt on too. So it's a, junkyard option, which is what I love. This is off of an S10. Now, the backing plate bolts on just like a normal backing plate. Has my little pawl right here for my parking brake cable to go in on the little lever doodad back here. And then this is what they call an in-hat parking brake. So it's like a drum brake for the parking brake setup. Rotor goes on, and when you pull the cable, it does this, and, brake stuff. But on top of that, your rotor sits on here, and your abutment, and here, let's use pictures. The bracket doodabber goes right there, and your caliper sits on that. And all of this bolts right up to the 4-bolt flange of a 10-bolt. Yes, this is a 7.5. I will break this and probably upgrade. It will bolt to a 10.5 or a 8.5-inch 10-bolt also. I've done this swap on a couple vehicles, and you're never as far off as getting the Junkyard. Guys at ET Performance donated me a 10-bolt out of a 2001 4-wheel drive S10 Blazer, which, I know, I said 4-wheel drive. It's okay. The only difference between 2-wheel and 4-wheel drive, get that to stay, is the height of the hat. This is where the e-brake portion slides in. It's just the height of this. Yeah, axle pushed in. Simple. So, first thing we got to do here, let's get the rotor in place. I'm doing mock-up, but if you just bought these, you want to wash all the gunk off it. And, you'll probably have these little things that your wheels bolt to. Studs. I don't, because mine weren't long enough. Story of my life. So, you can put your rotor on there. Now that's going to do a couple things. It's going to give you your spacing. So, you can see how your little parking brake shoes will ride on the little lip in here. Give you some much better holding power than whatever the hell that springy shit was. Oops, I said bad things. So one thing I did have to do, is I'm using a conglomeration of parts, is on this axle. And I know I probably get different stuff or upgrade or whatever have yous. There was a little lip right in there at the very end. I can find something pointy. Nope. C-clip. It's not pointy. The little lip, actually about that thick, that just sat right here at the edge all the way around. Now when you try to put this rotor on there, it's French word chamfered on the end down there, so it can go on there. Just wasn't enough. And I could have ground down on the rotor, but see if it was on the power tour or something and something broke and I needed a new rotor, then that means I'd have to also on the side of the road try to do that again. So I modified the hard part, which would be the axle, so that every time I put my new rotors on, that it'll just fit. So I took that off, cleaned it up a little bit. I just set my, well, I put it in my lathe, which is just cut off wheel sideways and made it, so cut it off. So that sits in there nice. And then you get this little guy on, which normally you'd have your lug studs in and tighten the lug nut down, and all this would be nice and happy. You just throw this little guy, little bracket on, and on the back side of your backing plate, I'll get a bolt in here and then I'll show you. Back side of this backing plate, there's a couple holes, and you get some aluminum bolts that came with it, and this little guy will just sit right there. Yeah, just sits right there, and that's what your caliper bolts do. Get you in there. See, it bolts right there. Now, one key aspect to this you want to look at, get you lined up, see what the heck I'm talking about. Right down here, the spacing on the rotor. There you go. This distance here, this rotor has to be centered in this little hole here. So this is where bolting it down would probably be a good idea, but I don't have those yet. So I'm going to push that up there and see that this all should work, because it just came off of a, nothing was modified to the spacing on that, which you can see the spacing is pretty darn close. So we're going to be able to run with that. If it was not close, and say it was too far this way or too far that way, well, it bolts on the back, right? So you can put a spacer between the bolt and the bracket, put it this way. Or what I've done in the past is I've taken a little bit off of the bracket with my other, I don't know, belt sander or whatever, cut a little bit off of this, allow it to suck in a little bit until you're basically even on both sides here. So I'm going to tighten that up, and then I'm going to talk about the caliper. Next step, caliper, pretty easy. This is tightened up. Caliper sits on there. There's 2 slide pins in the back of your bracket. This caliper just bolts to those slide pins. So you're going to tighten them up. You may have to hold your slide pin. Make sure that you've cleaned those out and those are nice and slidey, because they need to do slidey things. And then I'll mock you up right where you gotta be. Again, I don't have my wheel studs, so I gotta keep taking this apart anyway. And I'll clean it up and do all the things when it's time to assemble, like put my brake pads in and all that. But what I'm doing right now is about to mock up for my hard lines and my stainless lines. These use an M10 banjo. I just use same thing I've used on the front. Little $30 stainless line, comes on Amazon. 3/8 24 on one side, which will fit my brake lines just fine, and the M10 banjo comes with it. And of course, make sure that your bleeder is facing up, which this one is, and that's pretty much it. Then reassemble the pin and the C-clips and all that stuff on the axle things, and you're back up. So all in all, pretty cheap little upgrade. Like I said, I like to do this just because parts availability and they're cheaper. There's still plenty of pad compounds for an S10 caliper versus a LS1 Camaro caliper, although you're a little different in size. I don't have those offhand, but you can look those up. Guys have run this setup, and I've run this setup with the LS1 front calipers and the S10 rear calipers on just a factory disc master, and it works great. Or any of your conversion disc masters. I've seen guys use 4th gen booster and master as a unit to make this an entirely almost matched kit. So you're out, some Rock Auto parts, maybe Junkyard, or you got some cool friends like I do, AT Performance. If you guys are in the Donovan area and you need some stuff done, old school LS swaps, whatever, check them out. And that's it for my lazy butt. I'm going to get my brake lines made so I can cross this off the list and keep moving. If you got any questions, do a little comment thing, and thanks for hanging in there. See you next time.